Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Nile.
And I'm Kyle. And Nile's got a real treat today on webcam. You can see in the background now my deluxe goatsy plushie.
Yes.
That I have displayed on my bookshelf.
I was very surprised that the printing company you used for this allowed you to do this. I think a lot of them I think this really skirts the boundaries of obscenity laws, and frankly, it's unchristian.
It is a little weird because it is a Toys R Us exclusive. But
when is Goatsy getting a Funko Pop? Come on.
Surely somebody's done like a custom Goatsy Funko Pop, right? Like I'm not Googling it, but like people have made Goatsy like collectibles. Yeah. They had to have. I know they have. I have mine sitting on the shelf behind me, which listeners at home, you can't see it, but I'm on webcam with Nile. It's a one-way street, by the way, which is like a little awkward for me.
Which is frustrating because then you can't see my my novelty 3-pack of the Lemon Party, which look, you had to get the whole set. You couldn't just do one. It comes in a nice box that looks like a like late 90s, early 2000s web browser. And it's behind clear plastic, and it's just set up in a nice kind of diorama setup.
SH Figure Arts is coming out with Tub Girl real soon, and I've been looking forward to that one. This whole line of shock websites and internet images has been an amazing collector's paradise for me.
Yeah,
for
honestly,
you.
It's a hell of a time to be a toy collector.
Yeah,
it's all out there. I'm waiting on the line of Pain Olympics body pillows.
Oh yeah, those are like
and
they're going to be like those body pillows with like Velcro bits where they can attach and detach.
Mm-hmm.
So you can reenact your favorite. Yeah, reenact your favorite BME Pain Olympics moments. What year is it? 2023. What are we doing?
This is we're. At this point, it's vintage, like 80s nostalgia was in for a while, then and a little bit of 90s now, but I think we're gonna just jump ahead and go straight to the 2000s.
Yeah, now everybody's nostalgic for fucking internet 2000s beheading videos. Awesome. Yeah. What the fuck are we talking about today?
I guess we're talking about like old shock sites.
I meant like your topic, and you knew that.
See, that's the thing is this isn't. It kind of works, okay? So this isn't the best transition, and it's not like a shock site in that way, but it is something we are going to be talking about something that is a little, at least nowadays, it is very online. Kyle, this is one of those things that there's a term that I've seen on a lot of websites that is that when I'm looking up UFO stuff, alien stuff in outer space. And it's one of those things that I've always just like read and kind of basically understood what it was, but never fully had it clearly defined for me, So I kind of ended up going down a rabbit hole this week on where exopolitics came from.
Interesting. So you've been going down the exopolitics rabbit hole. I've been going down a parapolitics rabbit hole. So I'm gonna have to see where all this stuff matches up. But I'm curious because I don't know if I could necessarily define exopolitics as it's used by the people that we sort of in stories that we like look into.
Well, Kyle, I'm so glad you said that.
I have a guess.
because we're going to talk about exopolitics, and one of the main figures of it, one Dr. Michael Salla today, and the Exopolitics Institute, as of October 15th, 2009, have come to a consensus in a meeting of the Exopolitics Institute Strategy Committee with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, eight members of this have all come to a consensus on a formal and then a short definition for exopolitics.
Oh, okay.
So now I will say, we'll get into more on this later. Michael Salla is not the first person to use the term exopolitics, but he seems to be responsible for the kind of spread of the term, and runs the Exopolitics Institute, and a couple other things. We're going to talk about a lot of that kind of stuff, but in terms of a formal definition, exopolitics is an interdisciplinary scientific field with its roots in the political sciences that focus on research, education, and public policy with regards to the actors, institutions, and processes associated with extraterrestrial life, as well as the wide range of implications this entails through public advocacy and newly emerging paradigms.
Okay. So that's about what I expected. I also think it's broader than I kind of expected, but
it is pretty broad, because this is the thing that we'll talk about throughout the episode, because what this feels like to me, the thing that I really came to this realization while reading a lot of stuff about exopolitics, is it feels like they're trying to class up and like science speak up the idea of UFO stuff. Like, they're taking the concept of the great UFO conspiracy, or just like alien research or whatever, and trying to give it something that makes it sound like a legitimate scientific field. And in a lot of cases it can be. Like, I'm not saying that there's no merit to this kind of stuff. I'm just saying, like, it feels like almost more of a marketing campaign than it is something highly original,
Yeah. It always, I mean, with the context of what you have just said so far, I'm thinking like the people who typically use the term exopolitics are approaching it from that angle. Mm-hmm. Whereas I feel like people who more seriously research, the UFO phenomenon and its implications, I don't typically see them using that term. Maybe you've got some history on like why maybe there's a little bit of baggage attached to it, but I feel like there is.
I do have kind of the history of exopolitics a bit here, that goes way back to the foundations of UFO research and stuff, just because they have kind of grafted themselves into history in some ways. But it is it's not a thing that everyone uses. But it is a pretty common term for stuff. But like, it's common in certain circles. There is God, I don't know where to begin with all of this, because it's such a large question of how, like, where exopolitics fits into the like UFO community at large, because it seems like it's pretty commonly used. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but it's not it's a term that some people really stake themselves on and other people don't. Like, it feels like you kind of elect yourself into being the like really carrying and waving the flag of exopolitics, specifically in the UFO community, in a way that I don't fully understand outside of like trying to make it seem more legitimate. That's the big thing. Is it feels like the people who use it heavily are really concerned about appearing legitimate and appealing to a certain perception of UFO stuff.
Okay, yeah, that all tracks, and it gives me more context for a thing that you posted, a Rational Wiki article you posted a couple days ago. Now I know what that's. I was like, this has to be.
I did send something to the group chat.
I don't want to like chomp your bit here. But I was like, this.
Oh, this is not. That was found during this research, but it's not something that's like super related. So we can.
Yeah. I figured. I'll let you get to it, but I'm just saying. I saw that and I was like, this has to be something. It has to do with whatever he's looking into. So.
Yeah. So the thing that I sent, I found I was okay. So sometimes I use like the Rational Wiki is not a perfect source in any way, shape, or form. But sometimes when you're trying to look into a figure or like an organization, a lot of times if you can cut through their like overly sarcastic like writing tone, which is kind of annoying, you can get some stuff that kind of cuts to the heart of things and gives you some. I look through their sourcing a lot. Like if a lot of times I will, instead of like focusing on reading Rational Wiki, I will look at their, kind of like you do with Wikipedia. You go down to the sources and check them out.
It's a good jumping off point for sure.
But the thing I found was a Rational Wiki article entitled "Alien Abduction Insurance," and that this seems to be an actual thing that various organizations have sold in the past, including Lloyd's of London, who are most famous for like insuring pop stars and models, and like it's the most like really high dollar celebrity minded insurance. And the like a lot of it was just fake stuff, but there were other niche insurances listed on here as well, such as ghost insurance, werewolf and vampire insurance, virgin birth insurance, and reincarnation insurance.
Wait, what's virgin? Like you're going to have a virgin birth, or you were born virginally? Like what's
it is basically it's insurance for if you get knocked up without having sex.
Okay, so it's not
such
like
as a virgin birth by God.
Right. Okay, so it's not like, yeah, I found out today my mom's a virgin.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what to do with that information, but I'd like to get paid about it.
No, it is. It is what it sounds like. It's insurance in case you ever happen to get pregnant.
How do you even? How does one even like
you have to prove it?
That's the thing. How do you?
That's the thing that I found reading about this stuff was entirely separately. This is not this week's episode. Is the thing that always comes down to is like trying to prove it. Like for alien abduction insurance to actually for you to file a claim, you would have to have like concrete proof of being abducted by aliens to like trigger the insurance. So it becomes this whole thing of just like nobody wanting to take credit. Like there was another, it wasn't Lloyd's of London, it was another firm that got really like halted any of their insurance stuff, like any new clients after the Heaven's Gate cult, because they were like, what if we have to pay out a bunch of money?
I mean, I was looking at that article, and I feel like the whole argument with the Heaven's Gate people was that like they saw that like it was basically like they all killed themselves. They weren't abducted, even though like we have the bodies to prove it. I was looking at that article. I was looking at that, and I also saw that X-Files darling Scully,
Gillian Anderson,
was going to present the guy with the check before it all fell through. Which there was one attempt at making a claim of alien abduction insurance, and it was a hoax.
It turned out to be a scam,
believe it or not.
So, that was just a little. Sometimes you just see a link listed in an article, and you just have to check it out because it's really alluring. And the alien abduction insurance was one of such links. So, back to Exopolitics. In terms of like what we're going to be talking about today, you can almost look at this as like a specific subsection of the UFO community's response to your entire disinformation campaign trilogy, because it like I'm going to take you through kind of their version of the history of UFO research and exopolitics, and there's still disinformation, but it goes in a different direction, which I think is interesting to look at.
Okay, interesting.
Look, I still think I think that you hit the nail on the head in terms of those episodes. This is just what people who are heavily involved in exopolitics think.
Okay, no, I'm curious. I mean, with that whole series, I just kind of realized that there are multiple canons that address the entirety of UFO history. Like I don't know why, but it didn't really quite click until then.
Mm-hmm.
Just how many interpretations there are of like what's going on. So I'm curious how this differs.
So there, just to give you a broad scope at the top here, The name Exopolitics was first used by a man named Alfred Weber. I think that name has come up in our show before. I talked about him, I think in one of the I don't remember which episode it was. It was a while ago. But he is kind of he is one camp of Exopolitics that is quite a bit different than the Michael Salla camp, which is the one we're going to be talking about today, to the point where like there probably will be an Alfred Weber episode at some point in the future. And there are also some other people, like the other notable name that I found. Actually, there are a couple other ones, like even Lauren Eisenhower, is that her name?
I think so.
Gets involved in this community. And I also found some stuff about Andrew Basiago, there's a like on the Biblioteca website, there is an archived interview thing that is basically like Michael Salla and Andrew Basiago just arguing about Alfred Weber and Exopolitics and like Michael Salla calling Basiago a fraud and shit. Like it's pretty fun.
That's funny. I was actually, no joke, listening to Basiago talk this morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was listening to the Art Bell archives, and they put out like an extra, like an XL archival episode of like 4 hours worth of material on Mars. So of course, he shows up. And I was just like thinking to myself how many times that he essentially says like he's good at like basically throwing out terminology that sounds legitimate. Like it's like he watched a bunch of Star Trek and he's like, I see what they're doing here. And he like was able to like, I can't remember the term he was using. I was like, are we sure that's a thing, man? And
there's
just stuff like that. How many times he's just like, oh, well, experts say, and it's like, I need you to define what experts you're referring to immediately.
Yeah, it's him and his and the other jump room soldiers out there.
Obama.
Yeah. No, Barry Soetoro. Come on.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
So that's man, and man, there are certain topics that you kind of wish there was a way to like do another episode on, and there probably is. But Basiago remains one of those people that I would love to just talk about more.
Maybe I'll take a look at him sometime and see what new stuff I can find, because I'm sure it's there.
So today we are going to be talking about Michael Salla. Weber is going to be a whole nother thing in the future because he has a very different view on a lot of these things, or at least different methodology. But Michael Salla, let's start with a little bit about who this man is, and then we can get into the history of Exopolitics. So this comes from his Amazon bio. Now, a thing that I think is really funny, if you go on his Amazon bookstore, where this bio came from, he has a thing that's called like the it's some series on like disclosure stuff on like galactic societies and everything. And in one of the descriptions of it, it calls it a sextet of 6 books, but then immediately calls it a quadrilogy, like 2 lines later, of 4 books. But then now there are 7 books. So basically, like, he keeps hyping this up as like a completed thing and then waiting like 2 or 3 years and writing another book, because there was one in 2020. There was one like the end of last year or something like that. He just continues to add to this series and tries to make it this like completed thing. It's really weird. All the covers are like atrocious, but it's very funny. I'll send you some stuff later.
Well, I imagine he sort of like when he leaves gaps in his stuff, realizes there's gaps. This is my guess. Realizes there's gaps, goes to fill those gaps in, and in filling those gaps in with another book, he creates more gaps that need to be filled ad infinitum.
Yeah, he's practicing the art of sequential storytelling by doing research, quote unquote research, on Exopolitics. So, but he is a doctor, Dr. Michael Salla. Let's see where he has a PhD in government from the University of Queensland, Australia. So he's a doctor of government studies, I guess. His bio claims he's an internationally recognized scholar in international politics, conflict resolution, and U.S. foreign policy. So he has, like, before he got into Exopolitics, he wrote like seemingly like real books and papers on like conflict resolution in Africa and stuff. Like he seemed to be going down one route and then just took such a fucking hard turn into the world of exopolitics. And I don't know exactly why that happened. But he took a really sharp turn at some point. But you can see how he talks about a lot of these things and recognize his background in government, because it's very this gets very much into like aliens interfacing with the U.S. government. He's a real big proponent of the theory of Eisenhower making a treaty with the aliens back at like in like the 1950s.
Classic.
Yeah. So it is he gets very into a lot of the like alien human treaties and deals and all this like backroom stuff, and even gets into like Dulce base and like all that kind of stuff. It is deep state to a level, because hey, in like 17 or 18, he started trying to make QAnon reckon with exopolitics.
Oh no.
So that's like a whole thing that we're not going to get heavily into, other than it exists and you can find the tab on his website.
Is this guy a QAnoner? Is that?
He seems to have gotten interested in it in 2017 or 18, and has like done a lot of stuff trying to see how the QAnon reveals would affect the exopolitics of like our relations with aliens and stuff like that. Like looking at it as like from a civic minded point, it's really weird. I didn't read a lot of the articles about QAnon stuff because I didn't plan on covering it. But he did seem to take that turn about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that is now like a whole like sub tab on his website about just like QAnon and exopolitics. And he talks about it a lot. So,
oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. But he also is most popularly known as a pioneer in the development of exopolitics. He wrote the first published book on it in 2004, titled Exopolitics: Political Implications of the Extraterrestrial Presence. And then continued to write books from there on out, where he basically seemingly stopped doing anything else and just started writing books on this topic, including Exposing U.S. Government Policies on Extraterrestrial Life in 2009, and Kennedy's Last Stand in 2013, which investigates the relationship between UFOs and the Kennedy assassination.
Okay.
Which is currently in the running for, if I ever buy a book from him, that's probably going to be the one it's going to be. Although I don't know if I really want to pay for a book from this guy. He also, his 6-book series is all on the secret space program, which is now a 7-book series, because the new one came out last year. And yeah, so this guy is prolific. He also has a like weekly podcast that you can listen to. He does a lot of video stuff. This guy is totally in the realm of like that circle of people in conspiracy theory who all just have like web shows and interview each other.
And
have each other on their shows and like do all that whole thing. So there's not a lot of written stuff published free on his website. Most of it is like links to videos that you would have to watch, like an hour and a half talk. We're in that kind of vein here.
Okay. This all tracks so far. It's amazing. Like you hear these people who like put out 1 billion books on the same subject, and somehow like make a living off of that. And still the latest Game of Thrones book hasn't come out. You know, like
yeah. I wonder how we should measure. We need to figure out a scale of how many books a conspiracy theorist has written and the time it's taken for that book to come out.
For real. Like it's maybe George R.R. Martin should be taking some notes from these people. That's all I'm really saying.
Look, Stephen King just says it's his job to write, so he writes X number of pages a day and he has a goal, and that's just what he does, and that's why he churns out so many fucking books. But that's not for everybody.
George R.R. Martin has to go swim in the big Scrooge McDuck money pit every day. Spends most of his time doing that, I think.
I mean, look, you can't blame the guy. If you had the opportunity to not have to. I mean, he does still work. I think he does stuff.
I'm fully kidding.
I mean, he does.
I know. He wrote Elden Ring, kind of. He wrote a bunch of stuff for Elden Ring. That was kind of fun. So, shouts out.
I had entirely forgotten that.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay. So now we're going to get into the kind of history of the exopolitics field through the mouth of Salla. And a lot of this stuff comes directly from some articles and stuff he wrote for like the exopolitics conventions, as well as I believe from his first book in 2004. So there's a lot of the stuff that you can find on various websites online. And especially if I really needed to just like decide on a way to say Bibliotheca Pleiades, because
I think that's it.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think you nailed
it. I say it differently like every fucking time.
It's the Pleiades part that's like a bit of a trip up, and that's how I've always pronounced it, as Pleiades. But
yeah,
I don't know. Who cares? It's a made up word. All words are made up. What are we gonna do? Except for the handful that God reached down and placed in our heads, but that's not one of them.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is the history of it. It is dating, like, basically my best way I can describe it is this is the history of the term and like way of looking at things, going from the extraterrestrial hypothesis and the UFO phenomenon through to like the codification of exopolitics, which is either a subcategory of UFO research or a gussied up, like prettied up version of it, depending on how you want to look at it. They think of it as kind of a subsection of UFO research based on just really focused on the empirical analysis of UFOs, and it avoids inquiries into the extraterrestrial hypothesis until sufficient empirical evidence on UFO sightings has been amassed to indubitably substantiate the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Doubt it.
Yeah. Now, they do cite a definition of the scientific study of UFOs put forth by Dr. Alan Hynek. The guy that we talk about, I don't know, once every 3 weeks or so, where he says, we can define the UFO simply as the reported perception of an object or light seen in the sky or upon the land, the appearance, trajectory, and general dynamic and luminescent behavior of which do not suggest a logical, conventional explanation, and which is not only mystifying to the original percipients, but remains unidentified after close scrutiny of all available evidence by person who are technically capable of making a common sense identification if one is possible. And yes, that is all one sentence. Dr. J. Allen Hynek was not a short writer.
Yeah, I still have his book right here. I mean, a lot of it is very similar to that. But I don't know. Do we not think that we should be looking to update a definition from 1947?
Yeah, and that's why they did it in 2009. Actually, that's the definition of exopolitics.
Oh,
not one on the scientific study of UFOs, which I'm still it's a refinement of it, I guess. So I'm going to from here on out say ETH for extraterrestrial hypothesis because they use this term a lot and it's a mouthful.
People are going to queue in halfway through the episode and think you're talking about.
Fine, I'll fucking say
Bitcoin.
It. Who cares? Oh yeah, that is Ethereum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shit. All right, so the extraterrestrial hypothesis was officially proposed.
Do whatever you want. I'm just kidding. You can say ETH. You can say ETH. You can say EXO. You can say...
Yeah.
You can try and say the word really fast, like exopolitics, like that. Try that on for size.
Look, just to try to get to keep us moving, I'm just going to go ahead with ETH.
Okay.
So this was basically the term was first proposed as the most valid explanation for UFO and flying saucer sightings by a classified study initiated by the Air Force in 1948. So basically, when they're talking about the ETH, they're talking about it being seen by they're talking about the ETH being the most likely candidate for explaining UFO sightings. So in this case, it's like UFOs could be not extraterrestrial linked at all. They're saying all of them are, or most likely are. And supposedly, if we listen to them, this was codified by a classified study by the U.S. Air Force in 1948. They studied approximately 300 cases and produced a quote-unquote estimate of the situation in September of 1948, which the conclusion supported the ETH. It went all the way up to the Air Force, through the Air Force to the Chief of Staff, General Hoyt Vandenberg, who rejected it and made it clear that the ETH was not an acceptable conclusion for reasons related to national security concerns. So basically, this study was done, and it started passing up the pipeline all the way up to one of the guys in charge, and he was just like, fuck no, that's bad for us from a national security perspective, so that cannot be a thing. And you can look at that if you want to as the reason why Project Blue Book took a hard turn into denial.
Oh, okay, I see. I don't know if that. Okay, I follow.
Yeah. So they ended up destroying the report, except for one copy, which made its way to some private UFO investigators, such as Major Donald Kehoe.
Oh, that's an ex-military guy, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's a name. The Kehoe. The name gets used in UFO stuff. He's a known guy. And he ended up realizing this was evidence of a cover-up at the highest levels of the U.S. military and government. So he told a couple people that he knew, one of which was Captain Edward Ruppelt, and about the whole decision to reject the document. And this is a quote from Kehoe. The general said it would cause a stampede. How could we convince the public the aliens weren't hostile when we didn't know ourselves? The general ordered the secret analysis burned, but one copy was held out. Major Dewey Fournay and I saw it in 1952. Ooh. And so Kehoe started to write books about the extraterrestrial hypothesis and his investigations into it, and how the military was specifically engineering a cover-up in the quote-unquote interest of national security. And that was...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That is when, to Salla, that is when the field of exopolitics as a distinct approach to the UFO phenomenon was born.
When did Kehoe kind of go public with this information, did you say?
I believe in the the mid 1950s. Okay. So he saw the documents in 1952, and I think was writing books pretty shortly after. So this there's no term for it yet or anything. It's just the extraterrestrial hypothesis and the government cover up and everything. And Kehoe's methods and his analysis of this situation, along with the kind of individuals and agencies involved, is in the mind of Salla one of the founding principles or founding acts of exopolitical research and thought. So this was kind of the birthplace of it all, and the history of it from here on out is depicted into 4 phases. The first of which starts in 1948, where we're starting already, and is when people started to research more heavily into the conspiracy of government agencies trying to hide the truth of UFOs and the ETH. And books started to emerge on this topic in the 1950s as these researchers became more and more convinced that there was evidence of a cover-up, and the national agencies that are supposedly looking into these UFO events aren't taking it seriously or doing actual research. They are just trying to hush-hush everything. And so as this kind of spread out amongst the community, it became more and more popular, I guess you could say. This is still like, we're not talking large scale popularity here. We're talking representationally for it. But the next kind of critical event in the timeline is the 1953 Robertson panel, which we've talked about before. That is when Project Blue Book and everything was. That's the one we're talking about, right?
Well, that's the Condon Committee, right?
Condon Committee, shit. Yes.
But the Robertson panel is a part of all of that as well.
Yeah.
I swear one day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read enough material on this era of ufology that I'll just be an expert on all the shit that happened. But there's a lot of names. But I do believe that's Condon.
It's yeah, okay. So the Robertson panel is when there's a group of scientists chaired by Dr. H.P. Robertson and covertly funded by the CIA, recommended that the UFO sightings be debunked due to the potential for events to be manipulated by foreign powers in a way that would undermine U.S. national security.
Yeah, that's what that was. I also wonder, like, I don't know if anybody, presumably people have thought about this, but like whenever I hear now that an ex-military person is like going out of their way to talk about like government cover-ups of UFOs, I'm just like, how long have we been doing the Richard Doty thing? You know, like, how long has this Mirageman thing been going on?
It totally could have stretched back much further than we ever knew. So, like, it really is a thing where I get very skeptical very quickly, even more so than normal, but in a different direction, like basically towards the actors involved in all these things.
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't used to. But the Robinson panel was followed in March of 1954 by the secret passing of the Joint Army Navy Air Force Policy 146, which made it an offense for military servicemen or airline pilots to disclose information about UFO sightings that had been reported and were subjected to an official investigation.
Yeah.
And then the document of the Brookings report was prepared by the Brookings Institute for a NASA committee, and that is the one I talked about a lot in one of my bonus series, because it's basically the report that says that the public isn't ready for disclosure.
Right. Yeah.
It will cause like it'll cause a devastating societal effect if information about if the revelation of alien life were given to the populace, both from like a religious point of view and just like basically it'll just cause a lot of trouble for everybody involved. And it has been used a lot by conspiracy theorists to hold up the idea of these like leaking disclosure projects over time, of like using Hollywood to get us ready for it, and like all these other things of like they have to leak it out over time and kind of hide imagery and symbolism and things to kind of prepare you over time for this stuff.
And you know that ties in somewhat neatly with like one of these sort of like I guess theories or things that gets kind of said about especially this era of UFOs in the United States, where basically one of the explanations for why the government would like fake a UFO event, do it themselves, is to essentially test the mettle of the populace. Like how would they react to an event like this? So that kind of goes neatly, and it slots in there as well pretty easily, that idea.
Yeah. I like the idea of like blue beam type stuff being like, oh yeah, we read the Brookings report. We just wanted to like test it for real.
Yeah.
We just wanted to see what would happen, you know?
Well, this is sorry, Brookings is 1950.
It is 1953, and then the policy, the secret policy in the Navy,
well, but see, then
Air Force was 54.
Then you can, because like one of the earliest things that people kind of talk, like you can go all the way back to Roswell as like potential fakery with UFOs. Like as far as that like theory go, quote unquote, theory, sure. As far as that stuff goes, you can go back to Roswell. But like so like maybe it's like Roswell up through like the Washington D.C. flyover of 1952 is like, that's when for some reason they're just like, actually fuck this, people aren't ready, people are fucking standing in the middle of Washington D.C. fucking clutching their pearls and pointing to the sky and saying, good golly, it's too much, shut it down.
There was like a taste of it for just a little bit, and then the government was like, oh yeah, I don't think this is going too well. Oh shit, we might want to pull this back. So yeah, it is interesting looking at that. Like the more I find the timeline of all of this stuff, the more like it makes me want to go and heavily research those couple years, you know, where things were wild.
47. Honestly, you could go back to 1945 because there's some weird stuff in 45. I remember. But you could basically do the like late 40s all the way through the 50s, and it's like some of the most interesting UFO stuff ever. It's so weird and interesting. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and that's when like Kehoe, his first book, The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, was 1955. I just found it in here in my notes. He then wrote one in 1960 called Flying Saucers Top Secret, and then in 1973 another called Aliens from Space. And so these are kind of the Flying Saucer Conspiracy is the terminology that Kehoe used for this whole thing that would later, in a lot of people's eyes, become exopolitics. And it deals with like the aliens, but it also more closely deals with like how the government is contacting these beings and also keeping it from you. So it's a different turn on like straight UFO research in that way. Kehoe used a wide range of sources for his conclusions, both from the network of friendships he had from his military days, and he was also able to get information leaked to him by military officials. And then a lot of field researchers. So like we were getting the kind of private UFO researchers at this point who tried to look at various sightings as well. He formed NICAP, the National Investigative Committee for Aerial Phenomena, in 1959. And this is in kind of, in a lot of ways, Michael Salla at least looks at this as kind of another step in codifying exopolitics, because now we have like organizations for it and everything.
Right, okay.
And in his final book, Aliens from Space, Kehoe firmly identifies that the CIA and the U.S. Air Force are the two key institutions behind the cover-up and responsible for discrediting UFO researchers and witnesses, and also sabotaging initiatives with Congress to have the UFO phenomenon seriously studied. He described the efforts by NICAP to initiate congressional hearings in 1961 in this book, and it's detailing a lot of the stuff of the struggle of these people trying to be taken seriously, effectively. And so NICAP compiled all of the best UFO sightings in a confidential report to various congressional representatives for a planned hearing in the Science and Astronautics Committee in the House of Representatives. It then was aborted by the shock resignation of Admiral Hillenkoetter, director of the CIA, from the board of directors of NICAP in early 1962. This whole report was then published under the name The UFO Evidence in 1964, documenting 700 cases supporting the reality of the UFO phenomenon.
I've skimmed that exact document.
Yeah, it's like it's a big thing, and it's a thing that gets referenced in a lot of different places. So it's interesting looking like Kehoe as an important figure in the history of all this stuff. And as Kehoe's ideas of the UFO conspiracy became more widespread, we're hit with the Condon Report in 1969. This is where I was getting confused because we go through all of these things.
The Condon Report is what essentially gets Project Blue Book and like the official stance on UFOs being non-scientific. Like, But I just was like thinking, if Kehoe is one of those like Mirage Men types, then he spoils the whole goddamn mythology that was built off of it. And then I remembered that I can't remember if this was with you or who it was, but it made me think of the phrase "one bad shitter in the pot."
I was. You remember that? I do. I do not remember the whole thing around it, but I remember it happening.
Is Kehoe one bad shitter in the pot that spoils the broth? You know, like is he?
He might have been. You know,
that's. I
don't even know how to begin to explain that.
Well, I don't know. Is that like an our friend group phrase, or is that a real world? Did we make that up?
As far as I know, that was a thing that just was said in like a group of you, me, and like maybe two other people.
I'm gonna Google the phrase.
But hey, I think Garrett was involved in that, and he has a lot of folksy aphorisms that I'm not aware of. So maybe it was something that he knew of that got that I just misplaced. You know,
I think this is a unique one for our friend group. But if people want to start saying it, it's like one bad batch spoils the broth, but funnier. Or isn't that what the original?
The one bad apple.
One bad apple spoils the whole bunch. Well, this is one bad shitter spoils the whole pot. Which
one bad shitter in the pot.
You could think of it like in like a pot that's cooking like a meal, or you could think of it as like a pot is in like a toilet, and you could be like,
I mean, it works on so many. levels.
So many levels. Like you could be, I had a bunch of good shitters in the pot, but there was one that was bad, and it ruined the whole experience. Don't be a Donald Kehoe of shitters.
Yeah. That's really it's words to live by.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
So
go ahead.
No, you're good. After the Condon report, Project Blue Book was terminated on the grounds that the UFO sightings had no scientific value or national security concerns. And this was when the community basically looked at that and thought, okay, that's even more evidence of a government cover-up, because they're saying that all this stuff it's not even worth investigating. When these people are very much convinced that it was much the opposite. This was all trying to downplay the significance of the UFO phenomenon. And then we move on to the next figure in all of this. There were some more books published that kind of led the way for the eventual Exopolitics. One being Timothy Good's Above Top Secret, the Worldwide UFO Cover-Up.
Classic.
Salla describes it as one of the most influential and well-written exposés of how the UFO phenomenon has been systematically covered up in major countries to hide the truth about the ETH. Then there's also Richard Dolan's UFOs in the National Security State in 2000, which it yet again offers a detailed analysis of how the cover-up happened at the highest level by the military and national security agencies. And these people started to more directly name which agencies are involved in this, and really started to hammer down on exactly who's responsible. And then there is another side of things. These so far have been all researcher-based books. So instead of it being anyone who's had direct contact with aliens, these are usually scientists or enthusiasts that have done research and started getting really into these topics. But then there's the other side of this, which is the contactee side of this. And in this side of things, you'll recognize some of these names. Because in the canon of Michael Salla and Exopolitics, these people will get much more into this in part 2 of this episode, which I think is going to happen.
Okay.
Because there's a whole thing that I don't want to give the name for it, because I kind of want to just drop it at the end of the episode and leave it there.
Spicy.
But the other side of the whole birth of Exopolitics stuff is contactees in this era. Such as George Adamski, Daniel Fry, Howard Menger, and George Van Tassel.
Okay.
Now you know at least a couple of those. George Adamski being the big one. And while Salla claims that their reports continue to be strongly contested, some researchers did find them to be persuasive. He cites one UFO researcher, Bill Hamilton, who examined the cases of a number of California contactees and argued that there was much merit in these cases, which conventional researchers chose to ignore, probably because a lot of them have been cited as frauds. But in the world of people we're talking about here, they're still part of the canon.
Yeah, Adamski is a big one where, I'm always surprised when people try to wrap them up into their sort of theory of UFOs, ufology, aliens, because I feel like Adamski's kind of on the easier end of being able to debunk, and you can even go so far. I think I brought this up in the disinfo series, where it's there's some evidence to also suggest that not a very nice term, but Adamski also may have been a useful idiot for the CIA disinfo campaign. So.
Well, keep that in mind.
Oh, okay.
Also, slightly more recent contactees such as Billy Meyer, Carlos Diaz, also get cited in all of this stuff because they start to have, photographs and witness sightings and everything. And even though controversy exists, whether or not these topics, these contactees are for real or not, they do get brought up a lot in as sources and points of contact for the exopolitics community.
There's too much ego in a contactee's shtick most of the time. Where like they have their own special interpretation of what's going on and why they are a contactee and like what. And I couldn't tell you what everybody's different thing is, but it's like it's so hard to reconcile, right? Like I just don't. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a tough job.
It is. Well, now we're ready for phase 2 of Exopolitics, which starts in 1974.
Great year.
And this is basically the reason this becomes phase 2 is because a lot of the tactics changed. Because in 1974, the Freedom of Information Act was passed in Congress.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes. So this is when it was revised from its original 1966 version, and the passage of the Freedom of Information Act led to a organizations such as the Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, and also there are a couple other ones like UFOs Are Real, and there's that one's a later one. There's one we're going to talk about a little bit later called Operation Right to Know, which we'll talk about in phase 3. But we started getting these civilian organizations that banded together to use the Freedom of Information Act to try to get access to more information about government UFO research. So that's the big change in topics here into the second phase. The Citizens Against UFO Secrecy started to work to like bring about a lot more public knowledge of these things and use the Freedom of Information Act to get access to a lot more documents, along with the ability to launch lawsuits against the NSA and CIA for their complicity in all of this stuff of trying to hide this stuff from the public. And they were really trying to legitimize that UFOs are both real and an actual national security concern, because the exopolitics community continues, at least in this side of things, to be really focused on like government and politics and everything. Like that's why this is what it is. It's very focused on like how important it is for the government to be upfront with these things and how it will impact society and the government itself. Like it's the side of UFO research that would really want to tune into every congressional hearing. Like it's both an interesting and kind of boring side of UFO stuff.
And I was going to say, I've tuned in to congressional hearings about UFO stuff in recent times, and it is boring as fucking, and you get, there's nothing. There's just nothing. So like the idea of like, putting my whole ass into exopolitics and then I go and watch Congress say nothing for however long that fucking hearing was, it's like,
yeah,
there's more exciting. You could be listening to people on YouTube sit in their trucks and talk about the New World Order.
Yeah. And instead you get books such as Clifford Stone's UFOs Are Real from 1997, which examines key documents gained through the Freedom of Information Act requests that demonstrate the existence of various classified programs and incidents that deal with the UFO phenomenon and the agencies and military departments involved. So basically, they're using all this stuff to try to find the like groups inside of groups that are actively propagating this ruse, this conspiracy.
Maybe you don't know, but was this the like era where where people learned about MK Ultra?
Oh God, I don't remember when.
I can't remember either, but I thought found out about maybe it was with.
I think it's in a similar time frame.
Yeah.
In the 70s, not that book was from the 90s, but it's compiling a lot of stuff from previous eras. So
right.
But then the next thing that kind of gets used as the next important step in this is the leaking of the Majestic documents in 1984, which was then publicly announced in 1987 by William Moore.
Yeah, this is oh man. I mean, do we need to get
we've
back
talked
into
about the Majestic
William
12?
Moore?
If you want to, we've done at least one episode involving this stuff. And then I did an offshoot episode, and you might have revisited stuff.
Well, okay, so this is the reason this is... God, anytime people bring up the Majestic 12 in their shit, this is William Moore was the guy who was basically in cahoots with Richard Doty. And so, like, basically all of Majestic 12, you start looking into where that shit came from. It came from Doty in that entire era of just bullshit. So it's like Majestic 12 were the documents that they were, I believe, feeding not only Moore, but like Linda Moulton Howe. And I think ultimately they ended up in front of Benowitz. Like that was the big bullshit document, you know? It was like it's nonsense, but it's like solidified in the like I said, you know, one bad shitter in the pot, man.
Yeah. So we then had you know, the era of all the Majestic 12 stuff coming out, and then this was when the idea of the cosmic Watergate was put forth by one Stanton Friedman. Which is basically the collusion of various government agencies to perpetuate the conspiracy on the public. It's just like a more catchy name that for all of this kind of stuff, because it really is like I'm trying to think of a modern example, but they're just using like the thing of its time, you know, like it's basically like saying it's the 9/11 of this thing because it's a thing that's really evocative, you know?
Look, I mean, like I understand that, but like my brain just immediately pictures Nixon playing Bloodborne.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it really is. So then we get into phase 3, which starts in 1992 and is political activism and the UFO cover-up. This is where we get Operation Right to Know, who was active from 1992 to 95. Organizing a bunch of demonstrations to the public to learn the truth about UFOs and advocating for full public disclosure. This was sponsored by Ed Komarek and Mike Jamieson. And they organized 10 different demonstrations in the U.S. and Britain in the 3 years of their activity. They also, so this is really the point where it goes from interfacing directly with the government to trying to get a groundswell of public support. So they're trying to really advocate and like make the public aware of this conspiracy, of this cosmic Watergate, and get everyone interested to rally behind them to try to basically get the public to convince the government. Then there's also a more clandestine effort in this era, orchestrated by Lawrence Rockefeller, who in 1993 comprised a confidential effort to have Clinton briefed on UFO issues so that he could take the initiative for full public disclosure. Rockefeller contacted Clinton's science advisor, Dr. Jack Gibbons, and sent him the most persuasive evidence on the reality of UFOs that was available to the public. And Rockefeller organized an informal roundtable meeting of various prominent UFO researchers, including, ones that we would know, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Linda Moulton Howe, and Dr. Stephen Greer.
Mm-hmm. These are classic names.
Yep. And they all convened to share information with Bill Clinton's science advisor, Dr. Gibbons. The whole thing kind of collapsed after this because Dr. Gibbon was opposed to all of it and pretty much just told Clinton to ignore the whole Rockefeller initiative.
Now, Dr. Gibbon is like a big ape man, yes?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Big hairy ape man, and that's what he's really known for, along with being not into UFO research.
Right. I'm an ape man doctor, and to UFOs I say, phooey. And that's what he sounds like in my mind.
Exactly. And then there was like one briefing by Rockefeller to allegedly both Clinton and Hillary in August of 1995. I said that weird, calling both Bill and Hillary Clinton president and first lady.
That was what I was laughing at, but yeah. You did say it a little funny. And that's okay.
It did not go well.
Really?
Because they had concerns that pursuing a pro-disclosure policy would present, quote unquote, insurmountable political problems for President Clinton. And in another turn of really nice naming of a thing, they took all of the documents that they were trying to present to Dr. Gibbons and President Clinton and finally published a thing known as the best available evidence.
I did not have exopolitics with that woman.
Yeah. I love the directness of all of these naming conventions where it just like is, so what is this? Oh, it's the best available evidence we've got. All right, so what are we going to call it? The best available evidence. Yeah. Not of UFOs, of alien life, of whatever, of the UFO cover-up.
Sum total.
The best available
all
evidence. Of it. Yeah. And then there was also a briefing document prepared by NICAP in this era between 61 and 64. And all this stuff kind of didn't go much of anywhere other than eventually a database started by Dr. Greer led to the beginning of the Disclosure Project, which I believe still exists. It was a press conference in 2001 started all of this. And the Disclosure Project tried to get both ex-military and government and corporate people to rally behind the idea of disclosing the knowledge of UFOs. And it put together a whole like thing. Basically, it was a succession of the stuff done by Kehoe all the way up until now, 50 years later. We're getting a full blown organization dedicated to all of these things, and that was like a pretty big step. They also had a candidate for Congress, Stephen Bassett, in 2002. He ran for a House seat in Maryland on a policy. Like his whole platform was basically put around UFO secrecy and UFO disclosure. And he wasn't the first person to run on a UFO platform in congressional elections, but he was the first one to make it on the ballot.
That's fun for them.
Yeah. Now he did not win.
Oh, he didn't?
So, no, but he then did get involved pretty heavily in the community going forward. And yeah, there's a whole thing about him in phase 4. So in phase 4, we basically get up to the 2000s and everything, and the foundation of exopolitics as a whole. So the first place that you'll find the term exopolitics used is in a document by Alfred Weber that he put online in a document in like 2000, in the year 2000, I believe. And then, it was an ebook or quote unquote online treatise that was originally published just for free on the internet in 2000 and then put into a book called Exopolitics Towards a Decade of Contact in 2005. Sorry, the ebook was entitled that. The actual book was then renamed Exopolitics, Politics, Government, and Law in the Universe. So basically, Alfred Weber had the first ebook, but then Salla had the first published book in 2004, and then Weber followed that up by publishing his ebook with some different changes and stuff a year later. So there's like a kind of a debate on who is the like father of exopolitics.
Oh boy.
Because Weber and Salla don't seemingly get along very well. Because Weber is really into like intuitive channeling and stuff to get information and link consciousnesses with aliens and stuff, like get stuff through like that kind of new agey, more like new agey type stuff. And Salla is very like, oh, we're scientists studying science. And they seem to not like each other at all.
It's a two-party system after all. What you gonna do?
Yeah. We just have to have all these little cliques. Because like one of them has like one of the things I think was really funny is one of them has a website that's like exopolitics.org and one is exopolitics.com.
Oh my God. I've been to both of those.
Yeah. So, I think .com is Salla's and .org is Weber's. I think that's right.
Oh, Jesus.
But you have these kind of two threads running parallel that really don't seem to have a lot in common, and they actively like snipe at each other pretty heavily online sometimes. So that's fun. And so then this is when we codified the whole thing. Like the initial definition of exopolitics from the book in 2004 is as the policy debate over the choices governments and populations need to make in formulating and implementing legislative and policy responses to the presence of ETs in human affairs.
Wonderful.
It then gets updated in 2009 to that really long one that I read at the beginning of the episode. And so it really looks at, how the U.S. or world governments deal with aliens, which is like it's interesting. It's the thing I find interesting.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But don't believe a lot of it. So, yeah, there then are a bunch more books that come out from there. More people get involved. Weber channels a lot of information in similar methods too, and I think maybe even has some ties to the Urantia book.
Oh,
if you remember that one.
Yeah, I remember that one.
So that is the side of things Weber is on. Salla hates this guy.
Yeah, I kind of hate him too. Because just a little extra context, we did an episode about it, but the Urantia book is the book that informed the really insane and often racist beliefs of the people who founded Sleepy Time Tea. So there you go.
Yes. Yep. So that's always really fun. So then Salla founds the Exopolitics Institute. They start having these big conventions and stuff that people will come to, and start having like summits and all this stuff. But that's basically how Exopolitics came to be.
Okay.
In the words of Salla, basically selectively picking his heroes from history and taking all of his influences and turning them into
and this is phase 4, you said? Is this like the final phase?
That was phase 4, yeah.
Okay, and which phase?
I don't know if there is a phase 5.
Okay, which phase does Spider-Man 4 come out in?
I think they still don't quite have the rights until the end of this phase, so maybe by phase 5 we'll get a hold of him. Yeah, so he then maybe he kind of gets distracted because he gets really into Q stuff in
you hate to see
late
it.
2010s. And still talks about it to this day. He also still is very involved in a lot of the a lot of talking about government UFO disclosure and the various ways that aliens interact with humanity and stuff. You can find his weekly podcast, but there's also some stuff I just want to quickly get into some other stuff about Salla that makes you less likely to get into him. And for that, I turned to a blog post by a man named Paul Kimball on his site, The Other Side of Truth, a.k.a. redstarfilms.blogspot.com.
Okay.
And that is the article entitled The Case Against Michael Salla. And this is basically going into the researching methods and the people that Salla cites as his kind of sources and influence and all this kind of stuff. He still actually, as of the time of the writing of this article, was still citing Bob Lazar as a reliable witness.
Boy. Yeah.
He's very into Bob Lazar. And this is a thing that Salla writes about Bob Lazar in a paper entitled The Emergence of Track 2 Galactic Diplomacy with Extraterrestrial Races, the Role of Private Citizens and Groups in Establishing Communications and Agreements with Extraterrestrial Races. It says, there are dozens of extraterrestrial races with a variety of motivations that are interacting with global humanity. These extraterrestrial motivations span the spectrum from benevolent activities aimed at uplifting humanity towards a fuller expression of its collective potential to manipulative activities designed to undermine human sovereignty. There is extensive evidence of government agencies in the United States and elsewhere having held meetings and having reached agreements with some extraterrestrial races. Those official diplomatic meetings have been highly classified and suggest that galactic diplomacy at an official level has been secretly underway for at least 50 years without the knowledge of most citizens and elected representatives. A detailed examination of the 14 most significant extraterrestrial races interacting with humanity reveals the role played by national security agencies in the U.S. secretly reaching agreements with some of the extraterrestrial races while suppressing information about those agreements and of the existence and activities of extraterrestrial races in general. Now, that statement is very heavily put forth in this paper, and his main source for all of this is a man named William Cooper.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you know this name.
I think I do, but go ahead.
William Cooper is a has been described as the biggest wacko in the history of ufology. This is a man who was killed in a shootout with sheriff's deputies.
I know exactly who this is.
Yep.
I have his book on my shelf behind me. This is that guy.
Yeah. So he is one of the biggest influences and sources for a lot of Salla's information. Salla is a big fan of this man and thinks that he was unjustly gunned down effectively, it seems like. And if you look into William Cooper, he has like ties to the KKK and
bad man. This guy.
Yes,
I'm aware. I wasn't sure, but now you're starting to put out the details. Yeah, I've read part of his book, and it's bad. It's really bad. I mean, just not only just like what the content and the stupid shit, but like it's just written poorly. But it's kind of you could call it, important for the paranoid conspiracy sort of atmosphere that's sort of developed in this country since then. So
so Cooper is one of his big things his big reference points. He also really still cites like Adamski and Billy Meyer and people that are have been pretty heartily debunked.
Yeah.
And all of that kind of comes and even like the Majestic 12 stuff is very heavily referenced in the UFO community. We've done a whole episode on why all that stuff's bullshit. And he basically all of the sources that he doesn't always fully put out there. Like you can find them in his works, but he a lot of times he just will talk about experts or whatever, the ways that people use to hide where the stuff is coming from. But a lot of the people that he kind of endorses in his work are pretty fucking awful.
Yeah, William Cooper is one of the worst you could possibly be a fan of.
Yeah.
In UFO stuff for sure. That's fucking man. Oh God. William Cooper is somebody that I have considered doing a deep dive on, but I also feel like I have to finish his book before I do his episode, which it's a goddamn slog. So we'll see.
Yeah. So good luck with that. I when I was trying to find stuff about the man, Dr. Michael Salla himself, as opposed to just like his website and the bios that whoever, wrote for him, whatever, the thing that kept coming up was like, yeah, this guy was really into William Cooper. And so it's it just gets messy when you start to peel back the curtain, especially with his turn to QAnon stuff. And but that'll be it for this week's episode. But I do just want to quickly drop, we're going to talk about one of the theories of Dr. Michael Salla next week, and that is what is known as Galactic COINTELPRO.
What? Now, I have not heard that phrase before.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
and
this
kind
is
of terrible.
A thing that it's a thing that he talks about in this paper from a UFO, not a UFO convention, an Exopolitics convention, that it's one of like the big theories of basically diving into a lot of the same disinformation events and people that we've talked about, but looking at it in a different manner. So that will be what we're talking about next week. This week, I wanted to talk about Salla and himself and the history of exopolitics to build up to one of the big cases of it, supposedly, which is Galactic COINTELPRO.
That is quite the cliffhanger. William Cooper, want to talk about him? I've also been intending to go back and talk about COINTELPRO again because I've learned a whole fucking lot about it ever since I did that episode those years ago. So, man, what a...
Well, we're going to take it galactic next week.
Yeah.
You can, I'll leave normal boring ass COINTELPRO
very
for
boring.
you. I'm going to do the galactic
Thank you.
version.
I appreciate it.
Which that's a pretty good that's a pretty good breakdown of the dynamic of the topics we pick.
Yeah. True. Very true.
Oh fuck. So how about a big question?
Go for it. Hit me with it.
Which here's the thing that I think is funny. You almost you scared me at the beginning of this episode when you talked about looking into parapolitics, because my big question is, if you can think of exopolitics as the next level of UFO research, What do you think cryptozoology will morph into in the future? I was worried that you had already. There's an actual thing that you could answer this with about cryptozoology as opposed to, but you said parapolitics, so I was safe. But it scared me for just a second.
Well, don't worry, because I have a quick, easy fucking answer. It came to me immediately, like Socrates' divine sign.
Mm-hmm. You yelled Eureka and sprinted out of your bathtub.
This, we're gonna.
That's not Socrates, I know, but it's another reference. I just wanted to be clear that I do know that's not Socrates. I was making a different joke.
No, Socrates went and saw that one lady who was like huffing fumes inside a cave or whatever.
Yeah, getting real high in the hot springs.
No, this is we're gonna move on to cryptosynthesis. Okay. And what cryptosynthesis is integrating mind, soul, and body with the mind, soul, and body of cryptids. We can not only better understand them through this method, and that's a method that's developing. We're not quite there yet, but we're gonna invoke a lot of different entities to try and get us access here. We're gonna talk to the source and try and like see what steps we'll have to take to cryptosynthesize. So not only will we get to know them better and figure out, be able to study them better and understand them better, but we will also be able to pilot them like mechs. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say the entire time you've been talking about that, I have just been sitting here thinking, do I say, okay, are they going to do the fusion dance? Or do I say, are we drift compatible?
I was picturing drift compatible, but honestly, I kind of would prefer if we can come up with a method where we're doing the fusion dance with like the Jersey Devil, then I'm actually more in support of that.
Entirely little tangent here. So Jules and I, just for like background stuff to watch when we're not doing other stuff, have been watching Daniel Bryan's Planet's Champion run of SmackDown in 2018.
Okay.
Really, really off the wall, whatever the fuck. But Cesaro, aka Claudio Castagnoli, and Sheamus are a tag team called The Bar at that era.
Okay.
And when they come out, they both do the thing where they point and lean over like the end of the fusion dance at each other.
I love that.
And when we first started watching it, they were always for some reason with fucking Big Show. So they would do the thing where they would point and then they would like both scuttle away a little bit and leave like a doorway that Big Show can come out through. And so like every time it happens, Jules is like, are they going to fusion dance? Like it became a thing where it's just every episode they do that. And there's like really bright light on them when they do it. So it looks like they're really going for
That's kind of awesome. Do you think they're nerds?
I know Claudio's a nerd because he's part of their like the streaming group Up Down Down. So he plays video games and stuff.
Hell yeah! So you're gonna do that with the crypto? Is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with it.
What would you think?
I think I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction, and I think we're gonna go for crypto spirituality. In which case, we're gonna finally learn that cryptids are an actual higher plane of beings and start to look at them on a spiritual level and try to take the practices of Bigfoot, such as don't be seen on film and hang out in the forests and just keep to yourself. Like I think there will become like almost like a religious movement based around cryptid figures.
Oneness with cryptids through expansion of consciousness and spirit. Okay? I like that. Yeah, there's all kinds of things you could do. Show up at like terrible events. Just like be present for them, observe them.
Well, I mean, you can look at that spiritually as like the things that scare you and the dark times of your life. You have to be present in them so you can process them. Like there's a spirituality to that idea of Saint Mothman.
Yeah, cut your own nuts off and have them turn into two little demons. That's another thing that a cryptid has done.
True. Don't shower.
Don't shower like the skunk ape.
I think I'm kind of talking about a weird cult here.
We kind of
is what I'm actually coming around to. Yeah, I'm realizing that I'm kind of starting the next phase of cryptozoology as crypto cult. Which is, hey, I'm sure that's probably like some website that talks all about fucking Ethereum and nonsense already. But I'm going to fight them or just pick up the domain really cheaply when all that shit crashes. And start my own crypto cult.
Yeah,
so join in.
It. I love that. I think honestly, at the end of the day, we're going to discover that through through dialectics that both of our ideas here sort of have merit that can come together to get us even closer.
Fair enough. All right. I think let's go and take care of some business, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm down. What if I said no?
If you want to I mean, I would. You probably have to take us in a direction if you said no, because I that's the end of my notes for today. But we can figure something out. But if you do want to follow us, you can follow us on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers, from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're probably there.
Twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. Yep, we're streaming. We try to stream on weekends when we can. And lately it's been me and my good friend, friend of the show, Colin, playing some co-op Elden Ring. So check that out. Go ahead and follow us over on there. Email us, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. When it comes to exopolitics, are you a Democrat or a Republican? Be honest. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, you get It Gets Weird TV, where we're watching weird TV shows selected by our listeners, and then we discuss them. We kind of recap them and talk about how we felt about it and our history with them, things like that. Right now, we're watching X-Files Season 1. So check that out at the $2 level. At the $5 level, you get another bonus show on the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV. So you're getting a bonus show every single week instead of every other week. You also, whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, get access to our mainline show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out talking about all kinds of shit. Lately, it has been the sex appeal of M&Ms. I'm just going to be honest, going to be upfront about that one. And we also have a $1 tier, which is just a tip. You don't get anything out of it. You're just saying, hey, I like your show. Here's $1 a month. Thanks for doing what you do. If you can't donate, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird Podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Keep spreading the word of the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Nile.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.